Hi, and welcome back. My name is Ken Tapp, and I am the CEO of Decentral Life, and we are starting episode 4 with my good friend and now joint venture partner, Leslie Bocskor with INQD, that's Indoor Harvest. And what we want to do is pick up where we left off in episode 3, a week ago or so, as it relates to explaining what our joint venture is going to go out and solve, and go a little bit deeper and talk about where these problems that we're going to solve are going to generate greater revenues for our companies. And so before I get too far along, Leslie, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you not only being here, but allowing me to come here and use your studio.
Ken, I can't tell you how grateful I am, one, that you've taken the time to come here from Colorado. Two, I can't tell you how excited I am that we are in the View It studios. And I also can't say enough about how excited and how extraordinarily fortunate I feel at what we're going to be doing together, and how we have been, how our meetings, our discussions, and our plans have allowed me to take a look at things I've been working on for so long that I actually was surprised we were revisiting.
We just finished up about a 3 or 4 hour meeting, which is a normal thing for us now. Mm-hmm. And what I want to be able to do is extrapolate from that meeting some of the key points that we want to share with our shareholders and your shareholders, MjLink shareholders. Mm-hmm. Through this joint venture agreement, they all basically come together and benefit from what we're doing here. And I also want to kind of point out that what we're really doing is a little bit of a reboot, at least as it relates with MjLink and our efforts prior to COVID with the MJ Microcap event. Many of the technologies that you were instrumental in when you were on our board, mm-hmm. and sort of driving forward. It's fun sometimes to do we were doing a flashback of a few years earlier in our mm-hmm. meeting today, and to be able to kind of see where everything has progressed. And I think the fun part for me as a tech is knowing that what we were working on back then was really skating to the puck. It was making sure that we could solve problems that we started to see begin back then. COVID expedited these problems. It really sped up, and I'm going to use disruption, mm-hmm. because it disrupted an industry and created a bigger problem, which we had already laid the foundation for in the development of our technology before. And of course, as we had been talking for the last year and a half of somehow getting you and MjLink back together, and, mm-hmm. and the companies acquired or merged and all of those sort of things, it really was with this purpose to get this technology out to market, which we haven't been able to successfully do, in part because of COVID, and in part because we need to be able to work together to get to what we think are probably 200 or 300 or potentially more companies, certainly in the future as the industry continues to grow. Fast forward a decade, there might be 1,000 companies out there, mm-hmm. In the public markets that will be facing the same problem that our companies and our shareholders have been patient and dealt with all along, and we're going to go out and solve it for everyone. I'm going to pass the mic off to you because I have a tendency of getting going, but let's pick up a little bit where we left off in the last episode, talking about the problem and how the problem began.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I did it before, but I'll just do it again. Slight level set. If you're in the cannabis, hemp related industries, there are certain challenges you're going to face that even the most educated, even the most well-funded, even the most experienced operators, executives, will find themselves challenged by, because what has happened here in taking an industry that's been in the black market for decades, 80 years or more, and then creating a path for it to transition into a regulated market, while at the federal level, it still remains a black market. That sort of challenge of multi-layered, real-time dynamic, evolving business issues and environmental issues has created a never before seen in the history of business in any form set of challenges and opportunities. The challenges, though, have stymied even the most experienced and well funded operators. I'm not going to say who, but there have been literally billions of dollars in cash spent and wasted without any return because the challenges of this market are so substantial, so real, and so severe. Now, that being said, Ken, when we look at those challenges, there's also, so there's the challenge that's relative to cannabis, hemp, plant-based medicines, mushrooms, etc., all the things that are unique to this a series of businesses coming out of the black market into a regulated market that are dealing with issues around regulation, federal legality, state legality, etc. There's also another extremely important set of dynamics that are, again, often ignored. I wrote a book a number of years ago. It's still something we're working on finalizing the publishing of. There are reasons for that. In that book, I talked about the convergence and collision of two things. One, the cannabis and hemp market and everything I just described. And two, the capital markets in the United States. The global capital markets originated in the U.S. I went into that a little bit last time. The changes that have been taking place in the last 20 years have undone the work on building hundreds of years worth of work, building this very robust ecosystem to provide capital and a path to liquidity for early stage entrepreneurs in the United States. There was always a way to be able to be sure you could access capital through the public markets if you did certain things, even as a small business. And there was a path to getting liquidity that would exist as well. Both of those have been changed almost entirely. And when you start to take those two things into account, those two different issues, the cannabis and hemp industry and the specifics to that, as well as the specifics to what's happened in the capital markets and access to capital and how that affects innovators, operators, and entrepreneurs. And now we're looking at what's going on and how many people are floundering and having a tough time. It creates something I hadn't anticipated. We discussed earlier that there are, well, one, we have both worked together, and I have worked for years at helping operators, regulators, investors understand the aspects of these industries to navigate them. Two, I have worked for years, and Ken and I in particular have been looking at how can we lower the cost of capital, increase access to capital, increase velocity of capital, and make sure that there was a path to liquidity at some point for vital businesses that are navigating these industries. And what we've realized is that after years of looking at many different things, building businesses that are product businesses, etc., that there's an opportunity to take advantage of all of the experience and knowledge, relationships, and time we have doing that to provide value now. And then I'm going to say this and then send this back to you, that, and we covered this just in the meeting just before, it got me to think that the opportunities that exist to advise, to work with, to participate in through the acquisition of equity for the work and the value we provide to these businesses makes the opportunity, creates an opportunity to do something I have not seen since the late 90s. You may remember a small company we just mentioned, College Music Group Inc. The symbol was CMGI.
Right.
And what did they do? They sold music to college students.
Right. Records, tapes, eventually CDs.
And they were a little business, not a huge amount of revenue. They came public on the bulletin board, maybe the small cap exchange.
Yep.
And they also, because they had people that were at the cutting edge of internet and new media businesses being built, they ended up providing value to so many businesses, and they acquired equity positions in these businesses. And every time those businesses with names like Earthlink,
right,
generated some type of news, they went public, they increased their business, etc., it was news for CMGI. And CMGI went from being the $50 million market cap company to...
Maybe it was that.
Yeah, to maybe I want to say it was in the tens of billions,
right,
at one point.
Yeah, of course it did what so many other tech stocks did in 99, 2000 and such, but what it had identified early on was that it wasn't going to be the tech player that at that point Napster, and it could see what was happening with Apple and of course the
MP3.com.
MP3 and Microsoft had a early version, the Zoom of the MP3, and of course eventually the iPod, which crushed the entire market. So instead they started to focus on how can they help the infrastructure and take positions in that, which is exactly what we're doing, what we've been talking about doing now for years. The reason we started the MJ Microcap conference, the reason we put money into launching the technology for MJ Invest and all of the other technology that came around that. And you know, I think it's important for investors, shareholders to know in general that if you, and this is not shareholder advice, I always want to put that out there, but if you're going to get into any sector, you have to understand as a private shareholder, which of course that is what has supported the cannabis industry is the private shareholders. 99.99% of all of these companies are supported by private shareholders and retail shareholders. So those private shareholders, they only invest in an early stage company. As I've been a VC for the last 20 years, you invest in an early stage company because you can see well into the future that this company has a chance of becoming this big value market cap company. It goes public or it's acquired by someone else or private equity comes in, what have you. And in that model, in all other sectors, you know that at least 80% of the company, eventually, if it goes public, is going to be held by institutional investors. And 20% will, or less sometimes, will end up in the hands of the retail investors. And through this process, the early investors, the private investors, can get out. They go through a liquidity event. And that model was turned on its head literally overnight the moment we found out that the country was shut down because of COVID, and then weeks later, everyone was going to start getting checks in the mail for staying home and catching up on all their Netflix that they were behind on. And so what happened there was that you had, over a period of time that year, and then the next year, about a year and a half, about 30 million new people come into the stock market and the crypto markets. And these were by and large people who were already using money to do FanDuel, and they were already betting, online bettors. They were gamers, online gamers that understood the ability to go in and earn rewards inside of games. So, even at that point, there were many altcoins and cryptocurrency that were starting to find a way into games as a reward-based system of. So the pre-training and education of how to go and get digital assets and to invest in, we'll call them highly speculative industries, the crypto and the cannabis industry, were very, very attractive. And
esports also.
Right. What they didn't understand was how the markets worked. They didn't understand that cannabis had not yet been federally legalized, and as a result, you didn't have institutional investors coming in and supporting these companies. Now, I'm always looking at the silver lining of everything, but I do want to point out that there is not a silver lining to the fact that Congress has not moved forward on safe banking or reclassification. We hope, we cross our fingers that that's coming. But the negative that came from that in twofold, one fold, and then the next was legal operators could not generate profits the way they expected they could.
Correct.
And it wasn't an enticing thing for them to start moving back into the illicit market. It was a necessary thing.
Correct.
Or they just were going to have to go out of business, frankly. Yet at the same time, and I don't want to, this isn't a political thing, but it is a factual thing.
The black market is bigger now than it's ever been.
And that is because we have an open border which allows drugs to come into the marketplace. It allows capital to come into the marketplace literally on the back of people, and then it gets circulated back into the illicit market, which isn't just the United States. We're just the consumer base.
And now we're even exporters. We're exporters into Mexico of cannabis being grown in the United States.
Right. So we're a huge consumer base that other countries have figured out a way to come in and take advantage of because we haven't passed anything at the federal level.
Correct.
But so if you looked at how did we pass something at the federal level when we thought that it was literally going to pass in 20 and 21, right? We thought any minute now, this is already, it's on its way, that institutional capital could have come into the market. It would have supported some really great companies. At that time, there was about 350 that we were communicating with and marketing with and talking to for our MJ Microcap conference in 2019, and then of course conferences that we had already scheduled and paid for in 2020, and we could have seen an enormous amount of capital come in and support those companies, and never, even with an open border issue, never seen the black market turn into what it has today. And so if you're a politician and you're listening to this podcast, please go back and work on this, because this has a cascading effect across everything. Everything. I won't get into the political side, but I want shareholders and investors to understand that the dynamics of the industry have been in the balance. And so we in our conversations, in our meetings, we take all of this data into consideration. Sure, we can say, well, we've got a great solution for this. We're going to come out and solve this problem. You can't solve a problem long term unless you know how that problem is going to evolve and change. And you have to look at that problem and how it's going to evolve and change with all of these potential factors that will come in over the coming years. And that's what we've been talking about and focused on. And we're very excited to be able to start sharing some of that with you.
Correct.
Clearly, we've got the technology at the MJ Microcap level that's already available and ready to go for these issuers. We have this idea that Leslie brought to the equation as it relates to going back to 25 years and taking a very successful model from a previous industry in the music industry, taking all of your relationships and consulting and connections and everything else, which I was found extremely valuable when you came on our board in 2018. And had you not come on the board, I don't think we would have ever evolved MjLink into MjLink. And then we have at the Decentral Life level the AI and the blockchain technology to bring all of this together. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about
Sure. A couple things that also, so one, I want to thank everybody at View It. So we're here in the View It offices, the View It studios right now, and not only is this an incredible and powerful venue for us to be able to work with the staff here that is incredible, the team here that is so incredible on creating these podcasts. There is also, there are opportunities for partnerships and for business development together that we're exploring as well. So we're coming here, yes, to do these podcasts. That's only the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
There's so much more we're going to be able to do. Two, we've been talking about, so as we talk about the challenges that businesses have raising money, at the same time, while there's been less and less and less capital available through the traditional public markets for small businesses, while it's been harder, while to get capital, while the velocity, the speed that capital comes to you gets slowed down, so everything takes longer, it's harder, less return. While that's been going on, there has been an area of our economy globally that has been thriving, that's flourishing, and has created an enormous pool of liquidity. And that is tokenomics, cryptocurrency, blockchain, fintech, hashgraph, all of the related businesses and opportunities that come specifically from understanding how secure tokens, how tokens that are on the blockchain using smart contracts as well as other aspects other aspects of the technology and the tool set that can be utilized to be able to find more efficient, more transparent, and more reliable ways of establishing trust and the exchange and creation and transfer of value. Tokenomics are the future of early stage capital formation. Just like, who was it that said it recently? That the future...
Larry Fink.
Larry Fink.
Just a little guy who happens to be running BlackRock, which happens to be the largest holder, institutional holder of Bitcoin in the entire world.
And then he recently said...
someone to listen to.
Yeah, what did he say? That the future of the markets...
The future of the stock market is tokenomics.
Correct.
We've been talking about this for a number of years now, and it's not a moment to pat ourselves on the back, but instead to throttle forward and make certain that what we have worked on for the last couple of years, together and apart, can come and solve these problems by providing tokenomics for cannabis companies, first and foremost public cannabis companies, companies that are already filing, companies that make it an easier and path of least resistance to get correct filings done with the SEC and any other regulatory bodies around the world so that they are doing it the right way. Listen, I know that there's been a lot of doom and gloom about the crypto markets. Let's put that into perspective. We're talking about going after startup companies. Many of them were started with some 20-year-olds that didn't understand half of the things you need to dot and cross to have a company that's operating properly, much less the correct way to raise capital. And so, of course, that eventually is going to have a cascading effect back to shareholders that lose value when those companies crumble and fall apart.
Very important here. I want to say this, and I think it's critical, Ken. You and I have a history of understanding how to operate public companies, how to make sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted, how to be completely compliant, and to make sure that we're working within and exceeding the demands of the rules to the best of our abilities and our team's abilities, as regards what the SEC, the FINRA, state agencies, Congress put forth as the regulations. So when it comes to tokenomics, we're talking about doing things completely compliant. As a matter of fact, if we can be so fortunate as to have a seat at the table the way we've had in the cannabis industry, to say, here are some ideas, here is some research, here's some data to help you, policymaker, regulator, elected official, to help you make your decisions and navigate these very difficult waters most effectively. We're going to be there to provide that value and be good corporate citizens, again, to make sure that our shareholders, our projects are completely compliant, every T crossed again, every I dotted, belt and suspenders, measure twice, cut once. I apologize for all the cliches. It's important that you understand, just like compliance equals survivability in the cannabis and hemp industry, compliance equals survivability and thrivability as it regards the public markets, tokenomics, and those opportunities. So when we talk about it, we're doing it completely in line with all of the rules, and we're helping to make the rules more effective for business and for citizens in general.
We're really approaching it it's a two-prong approach. One, we've helped educate sometimes policymakers even, what the cascading effect is on how to do things the right way. Like you say, measure twice, cut once. The fact of the matter is that unfortunately policymakers on whichever party, it doesn't matter, oftentimes are just focused on what's right in front of them. And they don't quite understand that the policy that they're about to adjust or change, although it looks good on paper that day or that week or that year because it can solve something short term, has a reverberating effect across sometimes a city or a state or a market. And so we're really trying to help explain where things are going to eventually go. I've been in some amazing conversations with investment bankers, with private equity, doing a lot of education, and always talking about what is going to happen 2, 5, 10, and 20 years down the road. Of course, it's more difficult to figure it out further down the road, but we have a general idea. We've got a blueprint. It's called the stock market, and it's called the beginning of the SEC back in 1933, and the rules in 1934, and the progression of how the capital markets have evolved, which we are both students of over the last nearly 100 years, 90 years, and how that's going to evolve into the future. The second thing is that we need to make sure that any solutions we bring to the cannabis sector, or gosh, any other sector as far as that goes, are completely in line with the growth of that industry. Again, not a short-term fix or a solution, but where that industry is going. I know new industries, and crypto and cannabis are two of those, where you can get really myopically focused on this day and this week and this month and this year. And it is hard, especially for startup companies, to look out 3 or 5 years. Sometimes they can't do that. They don't even know if they'll be in business 3 to 5 years from now. But we have both led careers that have supported early stage companies. And we are experts at looking at an early stage company, sometimes in an early stage sector or industry, and helping them navigate that. I did that for 20 plus years on the VC side, and then of course with Decentral Life was able to get that company in a position where it is an incubator of companies. You have literally been, in a way, a one-man show of helping to incubate or accelerate companies. And so it is extremely exciting, and it will be for all of our shareholders, because most of our conversations are all about revenue. And the revenue opportunity is fantastic, but certainly the potential holding opportunity is equally as fantastic.
If not even more, if not more.
And so we are fast tracking things. You're going to hear another episode from us in the next week or so. Of course, we're getting towards the holidays where travel is a little hairy, but we're going to make it happen one way or the other. We're going to have some new things that come out, filings and information between now and the end of the year. It might even be rapid fire, and we'll do our very best to educate people along the way. Sometimes that's a difficult thing. If you've got a filing in the morning and you don't have an update in the afternoon where you can talk to shareholders, my shareholders know I always try to do that. I always try to explain things that just got filed. So we're going to do as much as we can, but we just, on the communication side, but we want everyone to be patient with us over the next 2, 4, 6, and 8 weeks, because it is going to be a catapult of what we're doing together. And so I might just leave it on that note, unless you have anything else.
No, you know, all I want to say, Ken, is very exciting times. Again, I want to thank everyone here at View It, Joe, Carlos, Mars, JC, everybody. This has been it's not just, again, the opportunity to come here and do the podcast. It's the opportunity to discuss how we're going to be able to work together, how we are going to provide value to small businesses, how we're going to be able to collect value by doing that, how we're going to be able to acquire equity positions, token positions in these businesses that we advise, looking at how that might look in the future and trying to plan for that and do it. This is, again, what business is when it's the best. It's working with people that I respect, that I admire, that I am happy to work with on projects that I believe in some way help make the world a better place, reduce harm in some small way, and we get to do it with, you know, in places and around people and doing things that are just tremendously rewarding and fun. Thank you.
I'll second that. To be able to do what we do and know that it increases shareholder value.
Yes.
And it helps businesses, which then in turn helps their employees and helps their local economy, and all of these things that really, if there wasn't ever a time where they needed our help the most, I don't know of it. It's right now. And so it's exciting that we've come together. We've been working on it now for quite a long time.
Correct.
We appreciate everyone's patience while we've been working on that for the last year and a half, couple of years, but here we are. And so exciting times, and get ready for a lot of fun. Thank you everyone for your time. We'll see you next time. Bye now.